Hello, everybody, and welcome to Attack the Baseline, a WNBA podcast, where every episode we attack our baseline knowledge of the WNBA. As always, I'm your host, John, joined by my faithful co-host, Kristen. Kristen, how are we doing today?
I think we're doing great. I had a great week watching the Storm and a bunch of other W teams. It was a really exciting opening week.
Mm-hmm.
I think we did probably watch one of the most exciting games, which the Storm, they went into double overtime last Friday. So I think it was a good week to be a Storm fan.
It was a good week to be a Storm fan, I will agree.
It was busy. I feel like we have been trying to keep up and watch as much as we can watch, which is good. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot, but it's been exciting.
Yeah, and this is what we're going to have to learn as being general fans of the league, is we don't just have to watch Sixers games. Mm-hmm. You know, we got to try to watch a little bit of everything. And of course, week to week, we're going to be following a team. This week, we followed the Seattle Storm, as Kristen already said, and we'll be joined later by guest of the pod, Dat, to talk about his fandom of the Seattle Storm and all about that. But we need to be following what's going on with all these other teams. There are some teams we haven't got a chance to watch, mostly because of West Coast timing. Like, I haven't seen the Aces play yet, who are obviously incredibly dominant right off the jump. But, we've seen a little bit of Fever. We've seen the Liberty a couple times. We've seen the Mystics a couple times. Obviously the Storm, a little bit of Dallas, a little bit of Chicago. So we're seeing a little bit of everything. Which I like, which is really cool. It's different. I got to change my mindset of how I'm watching basketball.
Yeah.
So before we get into our Storm discussion, we want to take a look around the league because, if you're not following as closely as us, you probably want to be up to date on what the first week's sort of results are, what the direction of the season is looking like. Because remember, it's only 40 games. If you're coming into Attack the Baseline as a NBA fan, they play 82. They only play 40 games in the W. So there's a lot more importance on each game. Almost double, you would say. So, Kristen, why don't you give a little look at the standings, see how things are shaping up so far. And then I want to talk a little bit about draft implications because there's some interesting things to note.
Well, so far, I think it kind of has been a story of some teams are really good and some teams are struggling. We have the Liberty, who are 3-0. You have the Sun, the Aces, and the Lynx, who are 2-0. And then a couple teams there in the middle that have split games, but then you have three more teams that haven't won yet. The Mystics, the Fever, and the Sparks have 0 wins so far.
Yeah. Pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small sample size. We'll see what happens for the rest of the season. But I do think, in general, we have predicted that the Mystics, the Sparks, and the Fever would be the teams that are going to be at the bottom, probably towards the bottom. So it makes sense. Something that I'm interested in seeing more of is how many games they each play per week. So a little glimpse, we have started doing fantasy WNBA.
We have. With a couple friends of the pod.
And it is very different from fantasy football, I will say. And it's tripping me up that some teams played 3 times and some teams only played 2 times. So the schedules are kind of different like that.
Right.
And you have to be paying attention. How many games are they playing? Because I also was kind of used to in the NBA, they play 4 times a week sometimes. So have to be looking.
Yeah. No, I've played fantasy basketball once or twice. But yeah, it's almost kind of nice that on certain days it's like you only got to watch 1 or 2 players because there's only 1 game on. That's what makes it easy.
I do love that.
To watch a lot of the W is that you can turn it on and there's probably only 1 or 2 options. Which obviously, because there's only 12 teams,
But it makes it much easier to follow all the teams.
That's true. That's true. Helps us to consume as much as we can. But Kristen pointed out those standings. I want to talk a little bit about some of the implications about pick trades and pick swaps and how it'll ultimately impact what's going to happen in the 2025 WNBA draft, which I know is a ways away, but a lot of people are talking about the Paige Beckers of it all. And there are people vying for that number 1 overall pick because they'll likely use it on Paige. So let's just see how it matters. There are 4, as far as I could tell from doing my research, which was a little difficult. For some reason, it was tough to find pick information and future picks. But the Dallas Wings own the Atlanta Dream first. So if the Dream tank, Dallas gets their pick. Dallas would get a high pick, in theory. The Mystics own Dallas first. So Washington owns Dallas's first. Dallas owns Atlanta's first. Dallas has the right to swap picks with Chicago. That's the biggest one, because Chicago is a team that's not necessarily supposed to be very good. I mean, obviously Atlanta's like gone a little back and forth. They're one of the group that had split wins, but Chicago specifically is one that we highlighted that could be not very good this year. If Chicago is one of the 4 worst teams, Dallas could end up winning their pick, or will get their pick, and could end up winning the lottery and being a good team that wins the lottery to get Paige. Dallas getting Paige would be like crazy for them because they're already good. That's like the biggest thing.
I mean, they're in the middle too. They're not one of the top 3 teams.
Right, but it doesn't matter. Like, they can be good, but Chicago can be really bad, and they can just be like, oh, we'll take your better pick.
Right.
It doesn't matter how good we are.
No, they're going to do that, I'm sure, because Chicago will probably be worse than them. But, I mean, they have room for improvement, Dallas, of course. They're still in the middle of the pack.
Right. And this all comes as a fact of the Marina Mabrey trade, which was when the Wings sent Marina to Chicago, and that's where they exchanged this pick swap. And it could prove to be pretty important. And Marina, she's been good to start the season, but like, she needs to be good to the point where it's not going to impact this pick swap coming back to bite them, because
she needs to be better than Paige.
Right.
Technically.
Right. Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. And, that's some pressure.
Right.
But, we like this guy. We got Angel. Obviously, Camilla got hurt. That doesn't help them be good right away. But they're showing some scrap. There was a game that we checked out, one of theirs, and they played with a level of intensity that I enjoyed watching. And I would look forward to watching some more Chicago basketball. But again, will they be good enough to prevent this from coming back to bite them? We will see. But just something to pay attention to as we go further along in the season, that like this could really matter. I say that because in a Bleacher Report mock draft, they had Dallas getting the first overall pick because of Chicago. That's the last thing I wanted to add. I was like, there are already mocks that like, watch out.
And look, lots can happen before then. But I did want to say I've been so happy to see Angel really step into her new role in the W. She is just taking advantage of every single opportunity that she can get. She's been in a bunch of commercials. She's going to the Met Gala. She's going to concerts with her whole team. She just seems like she is having a great time and is really stepping into a leadership position right away. So I am really looking forward to watching Angel more, and especially when Camilla comes back, because I think both of them playing together will be so much fun. So I'm looking forward to that.
I agree. So that's sort of how the season's shaping up after week 1. Before we talk about our Seattle Storm watch with our friend Dat, let's highlight a couple players around the league just so you know who we're watching, who we're appreciating. I think this would be a fun segment every week to like highlight someone you might not know about. But I'll let you start. Why don't you go ahead?
Me? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to highlight DeWanna Bonner. In the first game this year against the Fever, she's on the Sun. In the first game against the Fever this year, she became the 5th all-time scoring player in the W. She passed Candice Dupree, who is her ex-wife.
That's cool.
And her current fiance is also on the team, Alyssa Thomas, who you will talk about. They're currently engaged. Alyssa Thomas gave her the assist, so she, got her bucket. She passed Candice Dupree, her ex-wife, in the all-time leading.
That's pretty sick. That's like
it's wild.
An insane storyline to just generally follow.
Oh yeah.
For that to happen?
I mean, I don't think anything like that happens in any other leagues.
No.
Nothing. Because these players are in relationships with each other.
And that's so cool.
That's crazy.
It's so cool. Like married couples playing together, like engaged couples playing together, new couples playing together for the first time. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And she also just had twins, DeWanna Bonner.
Which is also crazy.
Which is, I mean, she looks incredible for just having twins. So that was just a really fun story.
Yeah. Shout out to DeWanna Bonner. Yes, you alluded to it. I also would like to highlight a son, Alyssa Thomas, fiance of one DeWanna Bonner. I noticed something when we were it was the first game we were watching, the Sun versus the Fever on opening night opening night. And I noticed the way that Alyssa Thomas shoots her free throws. And I was like, that's a one-handed push shot. And I was like, and she knocked it down. And I was like, okay. She knocks down the other one. I'm like, what's the reason? And they highlighted on the broadcast that she's playing through 2 torn labrums in her shoulders, 1 in each shoulder. I'm like, that's crazy. So I looked a little bit into it, and I don't have every details, and I couldn't specifically find the moment that she tore both, but in 2015, which was after she had already joined the W, she tore her labrum in her right shoulder. That's what the article read. And all through college, so she was drafted in 2014, all through college and for her first 4 years in the W, she was lefty. She shot with her left hand, which was fine. But then she noticed when she was playing in Korea that she wasn't getting enough oomph on her left-handed shot. Like, her numbers were dipping from the line, free throw percentage. And she was like, I'm just going to switch to my right hand. And now she's like a righty. She has been since that 2018 time that she was playing in Korea.
Even though her right labrum was torn.
Yeah, but also her left is also torn. So she's playing with, a tear in both shoulders. And the reason that she has foregone surgery and just looks to do strength rehab and conditioning is that she doesn't want to lose time on the court. Especially now because the team is really good. Like, I think in 21, she tore her Achilles. I would have thought that, and correct me if I'm wrong, listener that may know better, that she probably should have just gotten the labrum surgery then too, while she was healing from the Achilles.
Yeah.
But she looks really good.
Oh, she looks fine.
Has a ton of energy. She can get the shots off. She get to the rim.
I guess it's not painful.
No, I guess not. It's discomfort, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But just the fact that you can go out there and play through it is pretty insane. And you're not going to see an NBA player trying to do that.
They're little babies. They won't play.
You get a little tear and you're out for 6 to 9 months. That's really the reason, because she doesn't want to get up.
Well, that's the thing is, it might seem like, what do you mean they're playing 40 games? Why can't she go fix it on the off season?
It's the whole season. Right.
But really, these women are playing more games than the men ever play.
They're never off.
They're never off. They go overseas and they play for the whole rest of the year. So unless you want to lose that money, then yeah, you can't take any time off.
Yeah. Well, that's our Sun talk. I really impressed, and she gets the accolades. Like, she's won MVPs, and she's a multi-time All-Star, but it's just fun to watch her play.
Mm-hmm. And now engaged to DeWanna Bonner.
Correct.
Okay,
that's cool. Who else do you got?
I wanted to highlight Rakia Jackson. And I can sprinkle Cameron Brink in there because I think she's been, from what I've seen the clips, she's been having like great blocked shots. She is doing what she needs to do. Making mistakes here and there, but just starting, I think she's going to be really good. But I wanted to highlight Rakia Jackson because they're on the Sparks, Rakia and Cameron. They played a game against the Aces this past week, and the Aces are really good. They lost the game. But Rakia Jackson, she's not starting, but she went 5 for 6 and got 13 points in about 20 minutes. And that was the most efficient scoring of anyone on the team, and she had the best plus minus of her whole team for that game. And I think she is just really, I think she's comfortable. I think she is doing well off the bench. I would love to see them start her, especially if they keep losing some games and they can play around with the roster a little bit. But I'm really excited for her because she was one of the players at the draft where I said, wow, she seems so cool and so fun. So I'm really excited that she is doing well so far on the Sparks and is really finding her play style and is getting comfortable.
Dang. Yeah. It's cool. It's cool. I am looking forward. I saw a tweet about how fun the Sparks are early and that like they're going to be fun to watch and they're also going to lose a lot, and so they're going to have an opportunity to get Paige, which is what we said their plan was.
That would be wild, actually.
I mean, hey, built for it. So next I would like to highlight another member of the New York Liberty that has been very good in the league while she's been in. That's Jonquel Jones.
On my fantasy team.
On Kristen's fantasy team, the second highest scoring player behind Brianna Stewart in...
Who I passed up. To get Asia Wilson.
Yeah, Kristen had the first overall pick.
I'm playing for vibes.
Asia Wilson looks so cool.
Oh my god, I love her.
Her silver hair, so crazy. Yeah, so Jonquel Jones, who I did not know until right before the season started. Obviously, when we talk New York Liberty, we think Ionescu, we think Stewie. Jonquel, a center that can shoot the ball. My God, I love a center that can shoot the ball.
I think you need it in this league.
You think so? You just need shooting.
Yeah.
You need shooting. Like, she's an imposing force on the defensive end. She can get the ball. She can take it to the hoop.
Good.
She can, like, I would say she could yam on people. I haven't seen it yet, but I believe that she can dunk.
I don't know.
And like, I wasn't sure because this was my first time watching her play. But in the first game, 4 for 8 from 3 from a center is awesome.
Yeah.
And like 2 for 2 another game. She's playing right now. She's already made 2 threes.
Nice.
And like that means she's a serious shooter. Like, there's a limited number of centers in the NBA that are good 3-point shooters specifically. So like having another one of those, we watched Joel Embiid. He's not known for his 3-point shooting, but he had a really good 3-point shooting year specifically this year.
Yeah.
So seeing that in a W player is going to be something that I'm going to enjoy to watch because my favorite player is a center. So I'm going to like centers.
And I really think I have a skewed idea of what a typical center does because we watch Joelle all the time. So I'm like, why aren't these players like blocking more? Why aren't they jumping up and blocking the shots? Why? So knowing Jonquel can do it and is like that good is really fun.
Yeah. So, love that. Okay. Who you got?
Well, I just want to talk about Caitlin again.
Yeah, we got a little Caitlin talk.
You know, you always have to talk about the player everyone's talking about. I've just seen a lot of, obviously, the Fever have had, I would say, the hardest schedule so far and have the hardest games coming up.
Insane. Sun, Liberty, Sun.
Yeah,
right?
The Liberty twice, the Suns twice, and then they're playing the Aces. It's like incredibly hard. So yeah, the team's not good in general, so they're going to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And people are seeing that Caitlin is not bringing her team to victory and are getting upset that the league isn't like basically letting her do that. They're like, why are they letting the Fever play these hard teams at first? And why they are calling a lot of fouls on Caitlin, I will say.
Calling a lot of fouls on her?
Like, she is getting called for a lot of fouls.
I agree.
But, hey, that just comes with being professional.
Right.
But she is still doing a very good job. And I don't want that to be overlooked.
Yeah.
I saw a stat where it says her and Candace Parker are the only two players to have 51 points, 17 assists, and 13 rebounds.
Hey.
Through their first 3 career games.
That's pretty good.
Her and Candace Parker ever.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is good.
Like, obviously, they fashion stats in a way that makes it look good, but it's Candace Parker.
Exactly. They're cherry picking the stats, but you're comparing her to Candace, and she is doing as the best as she can, and I think they will be fine. It's just, she's on a bad team. Like, what can you do?
There's nothing you can do.
The team that had the first pick, yeah, they're going to be bad.
Right.
They can't just let Caitlin win just because she's Caitlin.
Right.
And I hope that people don't stop watching because they are upset that they're losing. They just expect her to win. But I think it just goes to show how good all these other players are too. So let's appreciate them as well.
And speaking of Caitlin of it all, she's currently playing the Sun. We're recording this at 7:55 on Monday, the 20th. And my dad just texted me and he said, Caitlin's down. Caitlin might be done. And I'm like, what? Like, literally, as Kristen was talking about Angel Reese just now. And I go and I look. She went to the locker room with an ankle injury. And then he texts me 5 minutes later, she's back. And I said, Dad, we're literally recording. Do you have a video?
Yeah, I got a notification on my fantasy app.
The whistle blows and Clark seemingly in a lot of pain after going down.
Tie game, too. This is live action,
the
folks.
Last thing that anybody wants to see
Well, she's walking.
is Caitlin Clark.
You can walk on the torn Achilles. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, she came back.
Good. Yes, she came back,
Okay.
which is good. So it's good that we saw that notification, and then right around the corner, she's back. So here's hoping. We didn't watch it. We didn't see it. We just saw the clip, but hopefully all is good with Caitlin, because that would be a crazy thing to happen. But it did happen to Sabrina Ionescu.
True.
3 games in. Interesting. kind of weird parallel. Yeah. Also, Caitlin's walk-up song on opening night in Indiana was Dreams and Nightmares, which 2017 Eagles Super Bowl winning team. They came out to that song.
She's not from here.
I know she's not from here, but there's a kinship.
Okay.
Go Birds.
I don't think she cares at all.
Anyway. We're going to do this every week. We're going to try to highlight a couple new players. Obviously, these are some big players, but we're going to look a little deeper, and hopefully you're going to learn a little bit more. But we're going to pivot to our conversation with Dat, who is a lifelong Seattle Storm fan. We talk about the games that went down this week. We talked about his opinion about what the front office is doing with how they've created their team, the direction of the season to come, and ultimately why he believes you should be a Seattle Storm fan. So buckle up for that. We're going to send it over there now. And joining us now, we have friend of the pod, Dat, who is our resident Seattle Storm fan, here to tell us a little bit about his history with the Seattle Storm, what he's seen so far with the season starting, and share a little bit of wisdom because we know he's been a long-term fan. Dat, we know that you're a Seattle resident, but why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your history with the W and why you're a supporter of the Seattle Storm.
Well, thanks, Sean. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. I feel honored to be your first official guest of the podcast. So thanks, Sean and Kristen. Yeah,
Big position.
as you mentioned, I am a lifelong Seattle resident. So that's how I'm a Storm fan. I guess my fandom of the Storm and the WNBA kind of coincided, which would be around the same time I graduated from high school slash went to college, which was 20 years ago. It was a good kind of coincidence because I went to Stanford for my undergrad, and Stanford has a very good basketball program, women's basketball program. So that interest in that program kind of coincided with the Storm being really good and about the time they won their first championship in 2004 with Sue Bird and Lauren Jackson. And so I've been a big fan ever since.
Nice. Yeah, Sue Bird, Lauren Jackson. Trying to think of other like Stanford connection. Cam Brink, she was Stanford, right?
Yes.
Nice. That you've told us about your history going to Stanford. I love, like, Delaware had a good women's basketball program, but not like Stanford level. Like they had runs with Elena Deladon, but I always thought they were a little better than the men. But Stanford obviously were like a very, very good program. Would have been a lot of fun if we had that similar level. But that's cool. That makes sense that that's your connection. So I guess some of your favorite players then, would you say that like Sue is maybe your favorite player, or do you have like a sneaky favorite?
Well, in terms of Storm players, I mean, Sue has been the face of the franchise. You know, she stayed with Seattle her entire career, which spanned 3 decades. I mean, through the ups and downs, through people retiring and leaving or joining the club, she's always been there. So, she's been just the face of the franchise. I mean, so she has to be on top of that list along with like Lauren Jackson. I mean, she helped us win our first two championships. She's originally from Australia,
Mm.
and she had a great period where she was a dominant force. She was a three-time MVP. Um, and now she's actually she retired from the WNBA in 2012. And but she's been trying to get back in the game back in Australia. She's been playing in the professional Australian league over there, and she helped the national team qualify for the Olympics. And she's still thinking about actually playing for Australia in this summer's Olympics in Paris too.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you have any a comment on that? That seems really. And so when did she must have stepped away really young? 2012, you said?
Yeah, her last full season was our second championship in 2010, but then she just started getting a lot of injuries in
Mm.
2011 and 2012. She was still with the Storm, but she played only a handful of games each season, and then just the injuries took the toll, and she decided to step away from the game here in the US, and she went back to Australia, started a family, but also played in the local Australian league there.
Huh. That's really neat. Like I know that basketball is really big in Australia. Obviously, there's a lot of good Australian basketball players in both leagues. But I know there was a handful of Australian players that were drafted in this year's draft. but interesting to move away from the W, go to Australia, continue to play. But I guess on like a national level, if you're not playing so many games and if she's not getting hurt, then she's probably fit enough to play. I assume the Australian team is going to be pretty good. They tend to make good Olympic runs, but that'll be neat to pay attention to because I've never seen her play. And unfortunately, I've never had the opportunity to watch Sue play, which it's a shame that Sue stepped away, a couple years before we started this because I know how important Sue is to the W. But yeah, there are some great Seattle players because of how long they've been in the league that I feel unfortunate that I didn't get a chance to watch play.
Yeah. No, Sue Bird seems like a really cool person, and I am bummed that I don't get to see her.
I mean, as you mentioned in one of your earlier podcasts, she's now part owner of the Storm. Going back to that preview podcast you had a few episodes ago to answer your shout out. So in 2008, when they were planning on taking the Sonics to Oklahoma City, a group of local businesswomen wanted to keep the Storm here in Seattle because the original plan was to take the Storm along with the Sonics to Oklahoma City. But there was a strong, a strong desire for the Storm to remain here. At first, like Howard Bennett, who bought the team, didn't want to separate the two teams, but he eventually relented and he sold the Storm component of the team to a group of local businesswomen. So that was how we retained the Storm, even though the Sonics moved to OKC.
Wow. No, that's really interesting. I was still wondering that. So thank you for letting us know and giving us that piece of info. I love that. I love that that group of businesswomen said, no, we are not taking our team. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And even like for as as small as a window as the Supersonics might have been, like, well, it wasn't that, I wouldn't say small, but like the way that they move away, it's Seattle just feels, and I've never visited Seattle, Kristen's never visited Seattle, but like it feels like a good sports city. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, right now there's the Seahawks and there's the Kraken, and then this is the basketball team. But I guess there's like
the Mariners as well.
The Mariners. Yes. The soccer team.
And then we also have the Sounders for MLS. But at that time, when I just started getting into the Storm, we were in a drought. We hadn't won a title as a city since I think the '79 Sonics or something like that. The Mariners were pretty good around. We had the run in '95 and were really good at the turn of the century. But the Sonics also were pretty good during that period, but we've had a long title drought. So the Storm winning in 2004 kind of broke that like quarter century title drought. So
yeah, and I mean there definitely has been, ups and downs with the Storm, but they've been pretty consistently good. I mean, having 4 titles, kind of tied for the most amount of titles, of any W team, which is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've made the playoffs 18 of the 24 seasons we've been in the league, so pretty consistent overall.
Yeah. Could you talk us through, because the Storm only won 11 games last year, I think 11 was the number. So they were bottom 2. Like, what was the situation if they've had 18 years out of 24 of success? Like, what was the driver there? And then, like, what did they do? Because they bring in a lot of all-star talent. And one of the things we watched following this week, these 3 games, we've seen like there's a lot of figuring out that needs to go into how they game plan, bringing all these players together. And I think there's like a cohesion aspect. But like, what was really the cause, the principal cause? I mean, I guess aside from like Sue stepping away. She was still a player? Yeah.
There's the combination of Sue Bird retiring and Brianna Stewart leaving in free agency to go to the Liberty. And so for the last, 5, 6 years, with our two most recent championship runs in 2018, 2020, it was a trio of Bird, Stewie, and Jewel Lloyd. That was the nucleus of our championship teams, and so two of them left via retirement and free agency. So it was up to Lloyd to kind of carry the load, and that's why she led the league in scoring, because she was the primary and pretty much usually the only scoring threat on the team. So that's why we slumped from, like, I think the previous season we had 22 wins down to like half of that, to 11 wins. And so I was hoping, that we would get the first pick, get Caitlin Clark, and maybe rebuild the franchise. But the last few years, I don't know if you know this, the lottery is determined by your last 2 years records, not just your most recent record. So we had 22 wins, and even though we had a really bad record, that's why we had the fourth pick in this year's draft, which we traded away. But yeah, that's why we weren't in the running for, like, to get Caitlin Clark or Cameron Brink, because your 2 years worth of records, not just your most recent year.
Huh. No, I didn't know that. So it's always looking at the last 2 years. So okay, so fourth overall pick, which they traded away to Chicago, right? Chicago, or to LA. To LA.
Yes, to
Was
LA.
that for
Yeah.
somebody?
That was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you might need to do a heat check later. I think it's for a future pick in next year's draft, I think, but I'm not totally sure.
So that was my thought. So they already brought in their free agents, and that's why they were like comfortable with sort of going with the future pick route instead of trying to trade it for, some potentially upside player from LA, because they did retool the team.
Yeah, I was hoping they would, having lost out on the Caitlin Clark sweepstakes, I was hoping that we could win the Paige Beckers sweepstakes next year, and just, have another 11-win season. But the management decided to go in another direction, which I'm still, the season's still young, but also based on the first three games, I'm not totally sold on quite yet. I mean, we got the two biggest free agent acquisitions in Skylar Diggins-Smith and Nneka
Mm-hmm.
Onwumike. But as we've seen in the first games of the season, we've had some early season struggles, and you kind of alluded to this earlier. I think it's going to take some time to kind of gel as a team, because we're basically kind of rebuilding the team with, like, a new focal point. So it's going to take some time to get used to everything.
Was Ezzy on the team last year? Or was she new?
Yes.
Okay, she
Yeah,
was.
she's
Okay.
been on the team. She's also Australian too.
Uh-huh.
She's been on the team for the last few years.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest takeaways from watching the first three games, uh, I think Ezzy's like one of my early faves. Like, she's tall, long, she can stretch the floor, she can shoot, she can attack the rim. Like, she was showing a little bit she can obviously shot block, like a little bit of a full tools player. And if I'm not mistaken, they said on the broadcast in today's game that she was an all-star. So like she's already a very talented player in the league, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep. No, I just wanted to get your thoughts on. I think the primary issue right now is that both Diggins Smith and Lloyd are both two very high volume, maybe not very efficient um, shooters. They score a lot of points, but it takes them a lot of attempted shots. I think today they were like 13 of 37 or something like that. So it's going to be a lot of missed shots, um, even though they may score a lot, score their points, but that's gonna leave a lot of opportunities for the other teams. I think the key to today's win against the Mystics was that we got a lot of offensive rebounds,
Mm-hmm.
and we had, I think, 20 plus second chance points, which I think was the big difference. But that's going to be a potential something that other teams could, take advantage of. Is that those two players are gonna take a lot of shots, and they're not always efficient at, getting those buckets to come.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was really impressed by Skylar Diggins Smith. I think she just has so much energy. She is so much smaller, than height wise than a lot of the other women, but she is so strong. Like her arms are like incredible. uh, and I feel like anytime I looked somewhere on the screen, like she was there. She was just kept moving around. And she's not afraid to go up and make a layup. Where I feel like some of the other players, they can have more of hesitation and they don't, maybe we're afraid of getting fouled or something like that. But she just knew what she was doing, and I loved that energy.
Yeah, and you said it yourself too, that like her and Jewel are very high volume offensive players, and it's pretty clear to see that Jewel has not shot the ball well to start the season, which happens. You go through cold streaks. I know there's a high volume of games that these women play, so maybe she's in like a tired stretch to start the season. Who knows? I don't doubt, considering that she led the league in scoring, that she'll be able to find it. I can tell that Jewel is very talented at getting to the line. I love a grifter. I love a player that can just make fouls happen to get them free throws. I think she had double-digit free throws today, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 12, 13, something like that. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of figuring out, when to run a certain play. If I remember, in the first game, there was like a 5-minute stretch where the Lynx they went on like a 13-0 run, and this was the first game of the year, but you could tell that there wasn't like an easy offensive set for Seattle to go to, and that just comes with time. But figuring out how to get the ball to Nneka, who's very good in the paint, or just generally making more shots. If the mid-range comes back for Jewel, then that's going to be pretty huge.
Yeah, I feel like in this early part of the season, it's a lot of defaulting to either Jewel or Skylar trying to take it off the bounce and driving to the basket. Sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't, and getting those fouls called is key to going to the line. So, yeah, I think it'll take some time for that offense to really gel and not just rely on those two guards just trying to do it all by themselves.
And with NECA, she rolled her ankle in the game on Friday, right?
Yes, and so she didn't play today.
Okay, we watched that game on Saturday. So I was like, what day is it? Yeah, so that kind of stinks. I mean, I'm sure everyone has been so excited to see her, and I think she was pretty good the first game,
Yeah.
And what she played in on Friday. So hopefully she's not out for too long, because I'm learning that because this season is so short, every game counts
Big time.
way more than, in an NBA season.
Right. Like doubly.
Yeah.
Kind of like an NFL season in a sense, just like you don't really have that margin, as much margin for error as you do with the NBA season.
Right. Right. And there's 12 teams, but still, you don't want to be one of the bottom four unless you want to be one of the bottom four, which we'll see. I would be pretty shocked if Seattle, after what you said, what management did, going out and getting these players, fell. But they do have their own pick, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, if Nneka's out for an extended period of time, we'll see. I don't want to put that on you though, unless that's what you want, Dad. Unless you would prefer that.
I mean, so like I'm not sure even with a fully healthy NECA. I mean, obviously Vegas is the team to beat, and the Liberty are pretty good there. The
Mm-hmm.
New York and Connecticut are probably the main two contenders for along there with the Aces. And I don't think we have enough firepower, even with I could be mistaken, but I'm not sure we have what it takes to beat those three teams. So I was still, initially I was rooting for, as I said earlier, the tank mode to get Paige Beckers to try to rebuild. But this is the way, the ownership has decided to go. So I'm hoping we'll find some magic, but I think it'll be a tough road to really compete against those top tier teams.
Yeah, yeah. And the Seattle, from what we could tell, they're not particularly deep. Like I liked what I saw from Jordan Horston. I thought she had some dog in her, in a good way. She good on both sides of the floor. I mean, um, like limited opportunities, of course, but one question that I did have, is it Vivian's that starts every game, but she only plays for like 10 minutes, unless I was mistaken. But like that's something that I noticed. Is there like a streak or something, or they just prefer to start the game with her and then quickly bench her?
So yeah, this is I think her first year with the team. They mentioned during today's broadcast that she scored her first points with the Storm. So she's fairly new. I think we drafted Nika Mule
Yeah.
in this year's draft, and unfortunately she can't play right now because of work visa issues.
Hmm.
And so I think when she's able to legally play in the US, I think that will definitely help us out because her time at UConn. I think she beat Sue Bird's record of like most assists in the program. I assume she had the record before
Really?
Mule did. So I think her ability to manage a game plan that will help. That will be a great complement to Diggins, Smith, and Lloyd, where she's not going to be looking to shoot, but she can manage the offense. So
Mm.
hopefully, I think she'll fit into, maybe she won't start, but I think she'll get some of those minutes when she's able to play.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering. I was telling John maybe Nika will start when she's able to play. Um, I guess we'll see what happens. I was really looking forward to watching her, so hopefully that visa situation gets figured out soon.
Yeah, that's a crazy, crazy situation. I don't know if I'm sure there's probably another example, but this was surprising to me.
Yeah, I'm also surprised why I'm not, I don't have all the information about why she's having so much trouble because obviously the WNBA, our team, Izzy is Australian. So, there's been plenty of foreign players playing in the WNBA. And so I'm not sure why there's a particular issue with her visa situation.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And they mentioned today that Ezzy is likely going to play for the Australian national team. Do you know, Kristen was wondering today about like if there's any rules about participation in the international teams, or if it's fine that like you can play for whoever. It doesn't really matter. Like you can walk away from the W during Olympic time and just go to your country's team if you're invited.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure the precise rules, but I don't think there's any like really restrictions or any like prohibition against that. I think I've read stories about, players just having to step away to like participate in a qualifying
Mm.
tournament or something like that. So I don't think I don't think the W prohibits that.
Okay, no, that's good. I guess it was just because it's different for the NBA. It's in the off
Off
season,
season,
the
right?
Olympics. So I didn't know if being in the middle of the season that they might be more hesitant of letting them go. But
I think the league I haven't seen their schedule, but I think in the past they've taken like a midsummer break during these Olympic years so that like players can play, in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure I haven't looked at precisely the schedule this summer, but I'm assuming they'll do the same thing. Where they'll have an extended break around the Olympics so that they can, have some rest, be able to travel to Paris and play there, and then they can resume like the second half of the season once they return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool that just by having a broad look at the W that we're seeing a lot of these players and a lot of the international players. So come the time that the Olympics comes around, we'll be able to watch a game between, two non-US teams and probably be able to point to 3, 4, or 5 W players that we know and just see how they do. So that's something to look forward to.
yeah, that'll be fun.
And yeah, another thing to look out for is that some of like, because the depth in American talent is so deep that some players have taken like citizenship with another country. And so if you see like an American player on like, the French team or something like that, don't be too surprised because some players who want to be able to play in the Olympics have like taking foreign citizenship with another team so they'll be able to play in the Olympics because there's just so much depth.
Yeah.
With the American squad, you just can't pick everyone who's, deserving of a spot. So
Yeah. Do you know when they announce who is on the Olympic team?
I'm not sure. I think they haven't finalized like the official roster yet. I
Okay.
think they've announced like the like broader group of players that would be eligible for to get on the roster, but they haven't narrowed it down to the official squad that's going to Paris.
Yeah. We'll
Okay,
be
we were wondering
on
that.
the lookout for that for
Yeah.
sure.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, I think we've talked through the games. We know your history with the team. Um, why don't we start to close things out? But we're going to ask you maybe the most important question. We're curious what you have to say. If someone listening to the show is teamless, I know there's a lot of people that have told us, like, I'm using this pod to find a team. Why don't you sell the Seattle Storm if you want to? Why should someone be a Seattle Storm fan?
Well, I think from a performance standpoint, I think we're in a situation where if you don't want to root for the like heavy favorites, it's easy to like, jump on the bandwagon and, root for the Aces or root for the Liberty who have like these superstar teams. But then you also don't want to be like everyone else and be like, oh, I love Caitlin Clark. I mean, that's awesome. I'm so glad that Caitlin's bringing all this attention, much deserved attention to the league, but you want to be a little more original than just rooting for the Fever. I think the Storm is a good team in the middle where we have this great history. We talked about their four league championships, and then not exactly starting from scratch. They have some great players as well. But it's not going to be an easy path. So if, a lot of sports fans are used to suffering and facing disappointment. So if you want some of that, maybe that's not the best selling point, but it's and then also from like an off the court perspective, as we talked about, it's a all women owned team. They're very involved in the LGBT community as well. Sue Bird is the face of the franchise, and she's in a relationship with Megan Rapinoe. Brianna Stewart, who was also part of the team, no longer is, but she is also a person with an LGBT background as well. So I think yeah. So for both reasons, off the court and on the court, I think the Storm are a good team to root for.
No, I think that's good. I think, nobody likes a bandwagon fan. But shout out to my sister, Danny, who has said that she's just going to become a Fever fan to watch Caitlin Clark, which that's fine. That's exciting.
Yeah.
But I think that's good. And I think a lot, like we talked about, Ezzy, I think is really awesome. Skylar was really cool. So I think there's definitely really cool players on the Storm, and you definitely have things to root for, and a rooting interest rather than just expecting like you're gonna win. It's still exciting. It's still competitive.
Yeah, I mean, we've had nobody come to us and say, "All right, I'm just going Aces because I know the Aces are going to win." Even though you suggested last week that you were considering that, but yeah, I like a middle of the road team when I'm considering, because they have just enough underdog that you can root for them, but they're not gonna be a full disappointment. So that's always just a nice
They
thing.
have a glimmer of hope
A glim-
potentially.
a glimmer of
Yes.
hope. Yeah, I think when I was talking to
Yeah.
somebody just about the league in general the other day, it was like, yeah, probably 60% that. Oh yeah, you were in this conversation. 60%. This was with listener Tim. 60% that the Aces win, 35% that the Liberty win, and then like what, 2 to 3% that the Storm have a chance to win, and then the same with the Sun.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely, New York and Las Vegas are the heavy favorites, but you never know. what can happen. Vegas, Chelsea Gray, one of their main players, is still out with the injury. I mean, they're still rolling without him, but that could be something they're not a very deep team. So that could be an issue come later in the season. So there's always a chance, it's not predetermined. You got to actually play the game out there on the court. So
Bingo.
Nice.
Well, Dat, thank you so much for joining us, for being our first guest on the pod. Before we let you go, any last minute words of wisdom to new W fans?
No, yeah, just I'm so happy to see like the effect that Caitlin Clark has had on women's basketball. I've been a big, college women's college basketball fan and a big WNBA fan for the last, 20 years, but obviously we haven't gotten the publicity that like other leagues have had. So I'm just really happy that you're, part of this kind of movement in a way just to gain, get more fans, just to get more publicity for the league and just to see. I'm really happy to see that the league is expanding, using this momentum to expand into new cities, and hopefully we'll just continue to build on this momentum and just like get more fans. So I'm just happy to be part of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And it was a great week being a Seattle Storm fan.
Agreed.
We just have to cut down on our turnovers. We've had 61 in the first 3 games, averaging 20 a game. So we got to cut down on that.
Yeah,
So,
that is pretty wild.
Seems maybe a little bit of an outlier, I would hope, but
Yeah.
yeah.
well, we'll see. There's 37 more games to go for Seattle. We know you'll be there, and we're looking forward to continue to hearing what you have to say about this season as we follow it. And yeah, thank you again so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Always glad to help out and be on the show whenever you need me.
Awesome. Thank you, Dat. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
And we're back from our lovely interview with Dat. Had a great time talking to him. He really knows his stuff.
Yeah, he really does.
Like a lifelong fan, when I say it, of this team, of women's basketball. Like, it's in the guy's blood.
Yeah, college basketball too, I think he's really into.
Yeah, I mean, Stanford grad doesn't get much better than that program.
Yeah.
It was great to talk to him. Looking forward to doing this every week as we continue to follow the W. Next week, we're going to be looking at the Phoenix Mercury. So we're going to buckle up, watch some of our first Mercury ball, because the Mercury are a West Coast team, and it's been a little hard on the East Coast to catch some of those late games.
Yeah, it's a little rough, but it's fine. We just watch the game the next day.
And that's why we're not promoted by it, but you really should check out WNBA League Pass if you haven't already. It's only $30 for the year.
Oh, yeah.
And you get replays and access to pretty much all of the games.
Oh, yeah.
It's a no-brainer. If you're going to follow, you might as well just grab it.
No, any game that's not streamed on a cable streaming service.
Or Prime, or like nationally. Like, I think Prime is considered nationally televised, which is like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, they're all there.
They're all there.
Yeah.
But before we send it off, Kristen, do you have anything else to say to our listeners?
I'm the most excited about watching the Fever Sparks game this week, this coming Friday. So because the Sparks are the one team that the Fever's playing that isn't like the best team in the league. So I think that game we'll finally be able to see Caitlin shine. I really want to watch Rickea Jackson, so I'm really I'm excited for that game.
Yeah, that'll be pretty sweet. And yeah, I mean, last thing for me, I like to highlight one of our listeners sent us a lovely email. My cousin Stephanie, she's decided that she's going to become a New York Liberty fan, which, as a born and raised Philadelphia area person, she says that it's tough. It conflicts with her morals, but
we don't have a choice.
But she has a friend that can get her tickets for cheaper. That's pretty sweet.
Let's go.
We definitely are going to hit a Liberty game at some point. Just a matter of when at this point. But congratulations, Stephanie, for deciding on your team. And folks, if you have decided on a team, or if you're still considering a team, continue to listen to our guest series as as we go on with each week of the W. And send us an email at attackthebaseline@gmail.com. That's all I have, Kristen. I'm looking at it. I see the baseline. What am I going to do?
Attack it.
That's right. Go attack the baseline, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Toodaloo.